The lights of Los Angeles shimmer like diamonds scattered across the hillside. From a distance, the city feels invincible, the land of dreams, of movie stars, of untouchable wealth. But in the shadows, something far darker has been unfolding. For years, Hollywood has sold us the illusion of security. Celebrities stepping out of chauffeur-driven cars, striding across red carpets, flanked by flashing cameras and bodyguards. They seem immune to the everyday fears that haunt the rest of us. But what happens when the very thing that makes them stars, their fame, their visibility, their openness to the public eye, becomes a weapon turned against them? On a cool summer evening, actress Tracee Ellis Ross returned home to find the sanctuary she'd built shattered. Her Los Angeles residence, normally a quiet retreat away from the spotlight, had been violated. Burglars had slipped in with precision, leaving behind no sign of forced entry. In their wake, they carried off over $100,000 worth of jewelry and handbags, heirlooms, designer pieces, tokens of a career and a life lived in the spotlight. But this was no ordinary burglary. The details chilled even seasoned investigators. Whoever entered Tracee's home knew exactly what to look for, and where to find it. No ransacked drawers. No broken locks. It was surgical, efficient, the work of professionals. When news broke, Hollywood held its breath. Tracee Ellis Ross wasn't just a random victim. She was one of the most recognizable figures in the entertainment industry, the daughter of Diana Ross, an award-winning actress, beloved for her charm and elegance. If she could be targeted in her own home, who was truly safe? And soon, it became clear that she wasn't alone. Reports surfaced of other celebrities facing eerily similar situations. Lionel Richie, his mansion stripped of watches and fine art. Brad Pitt, shaken after intruders slipped past security measures. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, robbed of private valuables. Even Jennifer Aniston, the epitome of Hollywood royalty, wasn't spared. At first glance, the stories read like isolated headlines, unfortunate, unrelated coincidences. But detectives working these cases began to see the threads connecting them. The burglaries shared the same traits: nighttime operations, precise targeting of luxury goods, minimal signs of forced entry. Even more disturbing, in many cases the celebrities had been out of town or attending public events at the exact moment their homes were hit. It didn't take long for investigators to draw a chilling conclusion: these weren't crimes of opportunity. They were coordinated heists. And the masterminds behind them? Still in the wind. For celebrities, the invasion of privacy is nothing new. Paparazzi have stalked them for decades. Tabloids publish intimate details of their lives with reckless abandon. But burglary strikes deeper. It isn't just about stolen possessions. It's about a sense of violation, the collapse of safety in the one place they should feel untouchable. Tracee Ellis Ross, like so many others, had invested heavily in security. Cameras. Gates. Alarms. Yet the intruders cut through those defenses like tissue paper. The question wasn't just how they got in, but how they knew when to strike. Investigators began to speculate: were burglars tracking celebrity schedules online, using social media posts to determine when stars were away? Or worse, were insiders feeding them information? House staff, contractors, even acquaintances who knew the comings and goings of the rich and famous. The pattern was too exact, the timing too precise, for these to be random burglaries. By the end of the summer, whispers of an organized crew began to spread. Detectives believed a network was operating in Los Angeles, one that specialized in high-value burglaries targeting the elite. Jewelry, handbags, designer clothing, fine art, items easy to move, easy to sell, but devastating in their personal value to victims. Still, in the court of public opinion, one fact stood out: if Tracee Ellis Ross, Lionel Richie, and Jennifer Aniston could be hit, then no celebrity mansion in Los Angeles was safe. The media frenzy only fueled the burglars' legend. Headlines painted them as shadowy figures lurking just beyond the hills, able to slip past even the most elaborate gates and guards. Security companies reported spikes in business, with celebrities rushing to install stronger locks, reinforced doors, and state-of-the-art surveillance. But even as they spent thousands on new defenses, a nagging fear lingered. Were they protecting themselves from opportunistic criminals, or from an invisible army, operating with insider knowledge and frightening precision? In the aftermath of Tracee's ordeal, detectives scoured her property. Every room told the same story, a calm, calculated sweep, no wasted time, no unnecessary destruction. The burglars had moved with the confidence of people who'd done this before. Perhaps many times. The stakes were no longer just about theft. This was about control, about fear. And in a city built on image, the fear of being vulnerable, of losing the illusion of safety, was more damaging than any headline. As cases piled up, the LAPD's specialized burglary task force began working overtime. The city had seen waves of high-profile burglaries before, but this one felt different. The methods were cleaner, the timing sharper, the victims more carefully chosen. It was less a crime spree than a campaign. And then came the revelation that changed everything. Through painstaking analysis of surveillance footage, police uncovered traces of coordination across different neighborhoods. Cars circling estates. Lookouts stationed in nearby streets. Even aerial drones suspected of surveying properties. This wasn't an opportunistic crime. This was organized, deliberate, and escalating. As one detective put it, these people aren't just burglars. They're predators. And their prey is the most famous, the most visible, the most vulnerable people in this city. Hollywood had become a hunting ground. And Tracee Ellis Ross was only the beginning. Don't miss our next deep dive into the dark side of fame. Turn on the notification bell. The story could have ended with Tracee Ellis Ross, 1 star, 1 burglary, a tragic violation of privacy. But Los Angeles detectives knew better. What happened in Tracee's home was not an isolated crime. It was a puzzle piece. And once you began connecting the pieces, the shape that emerged was chilling. Within months of Tracee's break-in, new reports started to surface. Each one carried the same shocking headline: another Hollywood figure, another burglary, another home turned inside out. Lionel Richie, Brad Pitt, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, Jennifer Aniston. Different neighborhoods. Different nights. But the same unnerving precision. At first, the burglaries read like coincidences, random hits scattered across the hills. But the LAPD's burglary task force noticed the patterns no one else was seeing. The intruders weren't clumsy. They weren't desperate. They were disciplined. Entry points were discreet: side doors, second-story windows, sliding glass panels left unlocked. Timing was flawless: celebrities hit while out of town, filming on set, or even standing on red carpets under the glare of cameras. Targets were consistent, high value, small, and easily concealed. Jewelry, watches, handbags, and art. Objects that could vanish into a black market pipeline without a trace. One officer described it bluntly: this was not smash and grab. This was a burglary playbook. And the playbook was working. When Lionel Richie discovered his home stripped of rare watches and fine art, investigators noted the same eerie details: no alarms triggered, no property damage, no messy ransacking. The burglars had known exactly where to go. Brad Pitt's ordeal was even more unsettling. The actor had invested heavily in security systems for his sprawling estate: infrared sensors, cameras, and gated entrances. Yet intruders slipped through unnoticed. By the time he realized valuables were missing, the burglars were long gone, leaving behind no trace except for the silence of his violated home. And then there was Jennifer Aniston. A celebrity whose life had been dissected by tabloids for decades, who had spent years fortifying her privacy. Even she wasn't safe. The burglary at her property sent shockwaves through Hollywood. If Jennifer, America's sweetheart, guarded by layers of staff and cameras, could be targeted, then anyone could. The press latched onto the story, dubbing it the Beverly Hills burglary wave. Headlines screamed about celebrity fear. Talk shows speculated about shadowy gangs. Security firms rushed to pitch their services to anxious A-listers. But the media's appetite for sensationalism didn't answer the crucial question: who was behind it? Inside LAPD's investigation, detectives began mapping the burglaries on a wall, pins and strings crisscrossing Los Angeles, forming a web of break-ins stretching from Bel Air to Beverly Hills to Malibu. The more they looked, the clearer the pattern became. This was not the work of amateurs. It was coordinated, organized, almost militaristic. And in the shadows of that realization came another, more disturbing possibility. These burglars weren't picking their targets at random. They knew exactly when celebrities would be gone, how long they'd be away, and which parts of their homes held the most valuable possessions. That level of insight didn't come from guesswork. It came from information. Detectives started asking dangerous questions. Were burglars monitoring celebrity social media accounts, tracking Instagram posts and red carpet appearances to plan their moves? Were insiders, house staff, assistants, contractors, even drivers, feeding them details? Or was something more sinister at play, a dedicated surveillance operation, watching Hollywood's elite from the shadows? The evidence seemed to point to all of the above. In one case, burglars struck while a celebrity publicly posted vacation photos from Europe. In another, the timing matched a staff schedule leaked through casual conversation. And in others, neighbors reported suspicious vehicles circling the block for days before the break-ins. The burglars weren't opportunists. They were hunters. And the celebrities, despite their wealth and fame, had become prey. By autumn, whispers began to circulate among the Hollywood elite. Rumors of organized burglary rings swept through private parties and industry events. Some claimed Eastern European crime syndicates were involved, others whispered about local gangs with international connections. A few even suspected cartels laundering stolen goods overseas. None of it felt impossible. Because the truth was, the burglars were ghosts. They left almost nothing behind. No DNA. No fingerprints. Just the lingering chill of precision. For police, the frustration grew unbearable. How do you catch criminals who move with surgical efficiency, who know their victims' lives as intimately as paparazzi, but strike in silence, in shadows? And yet, the more detectives pulled, the tighter the web became. A task force traced pawn shops, black market jewelry resellers, even international auction houses, searching for stolen goods. A few items surfaced in underground markets in Las Vegas and New York, but they were only crumbs. Then came the turning point. In reviewing surveillance tapes near Jennifer Aniston's home, investigators noticed a vehicle that didn't belong. A black SUV, circling twice before vanishing into the night. The same SUV appeared days later in footage near Brad Pitt's estate. And weeks earlier, neighbors near Tracee Ellis Ross's property had reported an unfamiliar vehicle idling in the shadows. The realization hit hard: the burglars weren't just coordinating. They were mobile. A crew, moving across Los Angeles with one target after another, scouting, waiting, striking. Detectives believed they were closing in. But the truth was more unsettling than anyone expected. Because when police finally traced the SUV to a storage facility outside Los Angeles, what they found suggested this was bigger than anyone had imagined. Inside were maps, blueprints, surveillance photos of celebrity homes, and lists. Names, addresses, upcoming public appearances. It wasn't just about Tracee Ellis Ross, or Lionel Richie, or Jennifer Aniston. It was about a system, a network, a machine designed to strip Hollywood of its most prized possessions, one star at a time. The camera freezes on a corkboard inside the storage unit, a grid of celebrity faces connected by red strings. At the center of it all, a name yet to be revealed. When police uncovered the burglar's trail, the truth was undeniable. This wasn't random. It wasn't a coincidence. It was organized crime. And the deeper they looked, the closer the danger crept, not just to celebrities, but to anyone living in the Hollywood spotlight. If you found this case chilling, hit that like button and subscribe for more cinematic true crime stories. The discovery at the storage facility changed everything. Up until then, the burglaries had seemed like separate crimes, linked only by the fact that the victims were famous. But those walls covered in surveillance photos, blueprints, and names revealed something far more disturbing, a systematized operation. This was not a crew of reckless thieves hoping to get lucky. This was an organized burglary syndicate, working with the precision of a corporation, with roles, responsibilities, and layers of protection. And for the first time, investigators realized they weren't chasing burglars. They were chasing an industry. The LAPD task force dug into the evidence. Each folder, each note, told a story of surveillance that had been going on for weeks, sometimes months. Some celebrities had been watched for so long that investigators began to suspect a network of spotters embedded across Los Angeles. One folder contained screenshots of Instagram posts, tagged locations, and timestamps. Another folder detailed work schedules for household staff. Still others contained drone photographs, giving aerial views of mansions tucked behind hedges and gates. It was surveillance on a scale that rivaled intelligence operations. How could burglars with such resources exist without detection? The answer lay in the dark corners of Los Angeles, places where gangs, fences, and opportunists had learned to cooperate for mutual gain. At the heart of the burglary wave was a rotating network of crews. Some were local gangs, lured by quick money. Others were international criminals, flown in for specific jobs. Together, they funneled their spoils into a pipeline that stretched far beyond Los Angeles. Stolen jewelry went first, broken down, melted, or sold intact to eager buyers in New York, Miami, or Las Vegas. Designer handbags were flipped in online marketplaces, where counterfeit culture made it nearly impossible to prove authenticity. Art pieces were laundered through private auctions, resurfacing in Europe and Asia years later, detached from their origins. Every burglary in Hollywood was worth hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. And unlike drugs or weapons, these goods could cross borders without a trace. One detective described it bitterly: they aren't just stealing bags and watches. They're stealing identities, history, pieces of lives. And once it's gone, you don't get it back. But what truly unsettled investigators wasn't just the scale of the syndicate. It was the psychology behind it. Why celebrities? Why risk so much for the richest, most visible victims in the world? The answer wasn't just about money. It was about symbolism. To the burglars, celebrities weren't just wealthy targets. They were cultural trophies. To rob someone like Tracee Ellis Ross or Jennifer Aniston wasn't simply to make money, it was to prove that even the untouchable elite could be touched. A criminologist consulted on the case explained it this way: these burglaries were psychological warfare. They showed that no amount of fame, no amount of money, could buy absolute safety. That's part of the thrill. The burglars weren't just thieves. They were sending a message. And the message spread fast. Across Hollywood, whispers grew louder. Celebrities canceled public appearances. Parties were moved to undisclosed locations. Security firms raked in millions as stars installed panic rooms, armored doors, and private guards. But the fear wasn't only among the victims. Behind the scenes, suspicion started to seep into the households of Hollywood. Because every celebrity knew the uncomfortable truth: burglars had inside knowledge. How else could they know staff schedules? Which safes contained valuables? When a star would be across the country filming? For the first time, many began to doubt those closest to them. Personal assistants, gardeners, drivers, even friends. One actress, speaking anonymously, admitted, "I started looking at everyone differently. Every time someone asked about my schedule, I wondered, are they really curious, or are they planning something?" You stop trusting. You stop sleeping. And as fear spread, the burglars kept moving. Detectives began assembling profiles of the ringleaders. Many were believed to be connected to international crime networks, some with ties to South America and Eastern Europe. Los Angeles, with its sprawling wealth and culture of visibility, was their playground. The crews operated like cells. Spotters gathered intel. Break-in specialists executed the jobs. Runners transported stolen goods. Fences laundered them into the black market. And above them, shadowy figures coordinated the network, insulated from arrest. Even when police caught low-level burglars, the higher-ups remained untouchable. Every arrest yielded little more than silence, or worse, misinformation designed to throw investigators off the trail. And still, the burglaries escalated. It was no longer just about items. In one chilling case, a celebrity's diary was stolen, leaking personal thoughts into the hands of strangers. In another, burglars left a taunting message on a bathroom mirror, written in lipstick. The message was clear: this wasn't just about wealth. It was about control. But just as investigators were starting to understand the syndicate, a new element emerged, one no one expected. Fans. Detectives uncovered online forums where obsessive followers shared celebrity schedules, flight records, and even satellite images of properties. Some were harmless stalker communities. Others, police feared, were actively aiding the burglars, providing free intelligence in exchange for nothing more than the thrill of involvement. The idea was terrifying: burglars didn't need to stalk every celebrity personally. The fans were already doing it for them. It blurred the line between obsession and crime. And it made everyone in Hollywood realize that the enemy wasn't only the shadows outside their gates. It was the digital trail they left every day. By winter, the LAPD had compiled enough evidence to confirm the truth. The burglaries weren't isolated. They weren't opportunistic. They were the product of a network, feeding off both insiders and outsiders, driven by profit and power. But just as police began closing in, the syndicate escalated again. One night, a mansion in Beverly Hills was hit. Unlike previous burglaries, this time the burglars didn't just take valuables. They penetrated the home's panic room, and came terrifyingly close to confronting the celebrity inside. The victim's name was kept secret. But whispers spread quickly. Hollywood realized the burglars weren't satisfied with breaking into homes anymore. They were getting bolder. Riskier. The question now wasn't just what they would take. It was how far they were willing to go. Watch until the end for the chilling conclusion that changed Hollywood forever. The burglary crews had always operated in the shadows, slipping into celebrity homes like ghosts. But the Beverly Hills incident, where a celebrity had nearly come face-to-face with their intruders inside a panic room, changed everything. For the first time, Los Angeles wasn't just talking about theft. They were talking about the possibility of murder. Detectives knew the syndicate had crossed a line. The question was whether the escalation was deliberate, a show of dominance, or whether the burglars had simply grown careless. Either way, fear exploded across Hollywood. By morning, tabloids screamed headlines about the night the panic room failed. Security companies doubled their contracts overnight. Some celebrities quietly packed their bags and left Los Angeles altogether, fleeing to New York, Europe, or hidden compounds in the desert. But investigators couldn't retreat. They had to move forward. And they knew they had only one shot at dismantling the syndicate before things spiraled out of control. The LAPD task force, now joined by federal agents, launched a sting. Using the storage unit as bait, they let it leak, subtly, through informants, that law enforcement had overlooked critical evidence inside. The goal was simple: draw out the burglars, force them to clean up their own tracks. For weeks, nothing happened. The unit sat in silence. Then one night, just past 2 a.m., a black SUV pulled up. Two men slipped inside with gloves and flashlights. Within minutes, they realized they'd walked into a trap. SWAT teams swarmed. The men were dragged out, faces pressed against cold asphalt. But when their identities were checked, investigators realized the truth: these weren't low-level burglars. These were lieutenants in the syndicate, men trusted to oversee crews and keep operations running smoothly. And unlike the smaller players, these men talked. The story they told was even darker than detectives expected. The burglary syndicate wasn't one crew, or even three. It was a franchise model. Ringleaders recruited crews across the country, training them in proven methods, then dispatching them to high-value cities: Los Angeles, Miami, New York, Atlanta. The crews operated independently but funneled their loot into the same laundering networks. And Los Angeles wasn't just another city in the syndicate's map. It was the crown jewel, the place where the highest-profile jobs sent shockwaves around the world. When detectives asked why the panic room incident escalated so dangerously, one of the men gave a chilling answer. Fear sells. Fear makes the next job easier. If they think nowhere is safe, they stop fighting back. They hide. That's when we take everything. The revelations shook investigators. This wasn't simply about money, or even prestige. The syndicate thrived on psychological warfare. Their power came not only from what they stole but from the fear their crimes instilled. For celebrities, that fear was suffocating. Tracee Ellis Ross, who had kept silent until now, finally spoke through a carefully worded statement. She described the invasion of privacy as more traumatic than the loss of items. It's not the jewelry or the clothes. It's knowing that strangers studied my life, my routines, my moments of vulnerability. They didn't just break into my house. They broke into my peace. Her words struck a chord across Hollywood. Stars began speaking openly, sharing experiences they had hidden out of shame or fear of being perceived as careless. What had once been whispered became a full-blown reckoning. And beneath it all, fans began asking uncomfortable questions. How much had they contributed to the problem? The obsessive culture of posting, tagging, and oversharing had become free intelligence for criminals. One fan forum was even exposed as having direct ties to the burglary crews. Suddenly, what had seemed like innocent fandom was revealed as a dangerous accelerant. The crackdown came swiftly. With new testimony, investigators raided stash houses across Los Angeles. They recovered caches of stolen goods, watches worth $500,000, handbags stacked floor to ceiling, entire wardrobes that once belonged to the elite. But for every piece returned, dozens remained missing, lost forever in the black market pipeline. The arrests numbered in the dozens. And yet, as the dust settled, investigators admitted privately that the syndicate wasn't gone. They had cut off a limb. The body still lived. What they dismantled was one branch, one operation. Others still operate in Europe, South America, Asia. The machine was too large, too global, to end in a single sweep. But at least in Los Angeles, for now, the burglaries slowed. The legacy, however, remained. Celebrities rebuilt their homes with new layers of security, biometric locks, AI surveillance, ex-military guards. Some went further, retreating from public life altogether. Fame had become a liability, each appearance a potential leak of information to unseen enemies. The entertainment industry, too, shifted. Event organizers tightened guest lists. Paparazzi were scrutinized for ties to criminals. The culture of celebrity itself, once defined by visibility, grew more cautious, more paranoid. And in the quiet moments, those who had been targeted were left with scars that no security system could erase. One detective put it bluntly: you can replace a Rolex. You can't replace the feeling of safety in your own bedroom. For the public, the story ended as it began, with fascination. True crime documentaries sprang up. Tabloids rehashed every detail. The burglaries became cultural touchstones, blending horror with voyeurism. But buried beneath the spectacle was a deeper lesson, one that stretched far beyond Hollywood. In a world where information flows freely, where every life is mapped and shared, the line between admiration and exploitation has blurred. What the burglary crews exploited wasn't just wealth. It was visibility. It was the price of fame in an age where privacy was no longer a right, but a commodity. The end. Which celebrity burglary shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.